Thomas and the Trucks has my favourite opening line to an episode in this whole season.
Thomas the Tank Engine wouldn't stop being a nuisance.
I think it's just how immediate and sudden it is, because it immediately throws you into the thick of what's happening with, oh yeah, Thomas is being annoying. Enjoy the episode. He's been complaining endlessly about being sick of pushing coaches and wanting to see the world. If you sympathised with him here, then congratulations, your wish should be granted about 30 years later. The other engines don't really pay him any mind, but he doesn't stop going on about it. Also, we have canonical proof the engines have tongues now.
But Thomas was a little engine with a long tongue.
Inside their smoke boxes. Nice. I know it's just a figure of speech, but still. One night, Edward comes to the shed and tells Thomas that he can go to work with the trucks tomorrow if he'd like. And Thomas is more than happy to do it. After making sure with the crews that it'll be okay to swap duties, the engines do exactly that. Edward goes off to get the coaches that Thomas would normally pull, and Thomas goes off to get the trucks. I'm sure it'll go smoothly and nothing at all will go wrong. Now, the trucks were already introduced back in Edward's day out, but we didn't really get much of an overview of their behaviour, which is what this episode is for. Trucks are silly and noisy and love to cause trouble, and even Ringo is apologising to the viewer for their tricks. Edward is experienced with pulling trucks, but Thomas isn't, and was way too excited to really pay any notice to Edward's warning. Oops. He gets hooked up to the trucks, and with a whistle from the guard, he sets off on his journey. Unfortunately for him, the trucks weren't exactly ready for the journey like he was, and don't take so kindly to him suddenly pulling them. Thomas doesn't care, and takes them regardless, blissfully unaware of what happens to engines who don't take trucks seriously. The music that plays in this sequence is one of my favourite tracks from the whole show.
Thomas began going faster and faster. Whee! He whistled as he rushed through Henry's tunnel.
It's Thomas's usual theme at first, but then it's got this little mischievous edge to it. Like you can tell something's about to happen. Thomas speeds up as he puffs along, excitedly wheeshing. There's a sped up first person view shot here, and I believe this is the first time that's happened in the show. It's always nice to see things from different angles, and seeing something from the perspective of an engine was a welcome change even if it was only a few seconds long. He travels through some familiar locations such as Henry's Tunnel and Gordon's Hill, which is where it happens. Thomas has been going so fast that the trucks have been growing extremely cross with him, and it's here on the hill that they finally decide that they've had enough. Thomas had to slow down in reaching the top of the hill and tries to apply his brakes, but the trucks are having none of that. They begin roughly bumping into each other, which in turn then bumps Thomas forward, sending him flying down the hill, laughing like maniacs as a terrified Thomas hurtles along. He constantly tries to get them to stop, but they don't care, and they just keep on giggling and giggling about how fun it is. Finally, Thomas arrives at the bottom and swerves safely into a siding. There could have been a crash here, but we'd still have to wait a bit to see one of those. When he's at the buffers, we see a large ominous shadow on his side, and I'm not entirely an expert on perspective and scale, but the Fat Controller must be huge here to cast a shadow like that. He asks what Thomas was doing there, and Thomas explains that the trucks pushed him down. The Fat Controller advises him that he still has a lot to learn about trucks, and that he would do well to heed Edward's advice from now on. Thomas and the Trucks is a fun episode with a nice runaway scene and nice scenery, and I already mentioned that I like the music here. I must admit though, I'm not a huge fan of most of Ringo's narration in this episode.
Edward knew all about trucks. He warned Thomas to be careful, but Thomas was too excited to listen.
I mean, I do think he's a good narrator. In fact, he's my favourite narrator. But in this episode, he sounds kind of flat until the runaway scene.
The shunter fastened the coupling, and when the signal dropped, Thomas was ready.
I apologise to any Ringo fans out there who think he can do no wrong. I love him, and as I said, he's my favourite, but In some episodes of this season and the next one, there are a few moments where he does sound a bit bored. I guess he can't be on point all the time. Fun fact, on early American VHS releases, when Thomas is going up Gordon's Hill, you can hear a technician's voice.
Look out for the train.
What makes this even weirder is that all the other sounds stop to let this play out. This is so wonderfully baffling that I can't help but love it. This episode was a good introduction to trucks and what sort of tricks they can pull. But I think actually having them cause a crash might have been an even stronger introduction, showing the audience the real danger that they pose. Thomas speeding down the hill was probably traumatic for him, but he still safely pulled into a siding at the end without any real consequences. Thomas never listened to Edward's advice about trucks, which was what caused him to get into that mess in the first place, which just goes to show that you should never get too excited and ignore the advice of those who are more accustomed to a situation you're unfamiliar with. This episode forms another part of Thomas's arc of thinking he's all that, not paying attention, not messing about, and then dealing with the consequences of that. Will the next episode continue this, or will he learn something? Find out next time on Thomas and the Breakdown Train. Thank you for watching.